Welcome to Conscious Conversations. I'm Christine Marie,
And I'm Charley Zhang.
and this is our Soulful Dialogue series, where two soul sisters come together each month to share what's alive in our hearts and explore the beautiful messiness of being human.
Through intimate, unscripted conversations, we dive into questions both big and small around self discovery, spiritual growth, and awakening the medicine that lives within each of us to create a more conscious and compassionate world.
We're here to bridge ancient wisdom with raw vulnerability, the sacred with the everyday. So settle in, open your heart, and welcome to the journey.
All right. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So, yeah, excited to be on here with you again. And I know that we had been texting back and forth about what we wanted to talk about for this episode. And, I had mentioned that something that has felt really alive and present for me right now is that idea of how we reconcile personal growth and development with all of the collective suffering and the pain that is happening right now, and how there's the sense that there is such a tension there, right? Because personal growth often asks us to turn inward to heal, and so much of what is happening with the world right now is asking us to turn outward to witness and respond and care. And I feel like there's both light and shadow sides to both, right? So, too much inner work obviously runs the risk of too much insulation, but then too much outward attention without a lot of that inner anchoring and that work to build that scaffold inside of yourself can be really overwhelming and really fracturing to our nervous systems. And this is something that I'm really feeling at this time right now. Everywhere in culture it feels really fraught, like it's a really fraught time, and it's a really intemperate time, and it feels like there's so much bitterness and divisiveness, and people are scared, and the stakes feel really existential, and everyone wants to be on the right side, but there's also so much moral exhaustion. And the thing that I've really been thinking a lot about is how do I sort of protect myself in that, but also how do I show up in the collective and contribute to it in ways that feel sincere and beneficial and compassionate, and in ways especially that isn't adding to all of the rage and the anger. So that's really sort of the soil of this conversation. And I don't know necessarily that I have a specific question that is coming up for me to ask, but I am curious what this is bringing up for you as you're here. Name this moment right now.
Yeah, I think this is such a powerful and important topic to name and to acknowledge. I do feel like what I am witnessing is that there is a lot of rage, there is a lot of anger, there is a lot of disappointment and frustration about so much of that's happening like in the world. And I think it's not about not having that, but it's about how do we channel that in a healthy way to where it doesn't add more separation and division, but that it adds more connection. Because I think what I've seen, in my work and in the spaces that I have been exploring within myself and with my clients and people that I care deeply about is that rage and anger are completely valid and are completely normal. I think when there are not healthy and safe spaces to channel that anger or rage or to express or release it, then that's when it turns into violence against another. And I believe that's like part of the epitome of the dysfunction of the collective right now, of all of these world leaders, all of these people who are doing harm to another person, my guess is had they ever had any safe or sacred space to really express their anger, frustration, rage, whatever it is that they probably have unhealed and unprocessed within them. And I'm not saying that's the root of it, but I think that can be part of it as to why there can be so much violence and so much in the world. And so that's what that brings up to me. And so I don't have like a clear answer for, what everyone personally should be doing, but I do think it is a time to really allow the anger and the rage that lives inside all of us to not hide away in the shadows anymore, and to find a way that's healthy and beneficial for that to come out to the light, so that some of that can be processed and healed in a supportive, nonviolent way.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely believe that rage and anger deserve an outlet for expression. I think the thing I that comes up for me is really more in the arena of social media and media, and that, I think there comes a point where witnessing and being in this atmosphere of all of this rage and hurt and again, bitterness can feel sometimes immobilizing. And I don't know if that's true for you, but I certainly know that it's true for me, especially when I am trying to keep up with what's going on and to keep myself informed. But then to see all of this intense emotion in every corner of the internet, it is really, yeah, I think immobilizing is the right word. And I think that also there's just, particularly in the realm of social media, it tends to, I think, reward a lot of visibility, and that sometimes there is a demand for a performance of care, and that how you show your care or how you show your rage is what's expected. It's expected to be loud, and it's also expected to be aligned with, whatever the correct issue of the week is. It's this sense of, you know, the world around us demanding us to prove that we can. And so I think so for me, where I'm getting to is I don't think that there's anything wrong with that rage, that hurt, that anger. I think that we should be able to face it and not turn away from it. But then I think that particularly what I'm seeing at this moment is that it sort of crosses a threshold where it becomes a little bit more about the visibility and the expression than, as you were saying, channeling that anger and that hurt into action, into a way that, sort of helps move the situation forward in a full way.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with everything that you shared. I think what I've noticed that's been really challenging is, yeah, there's been a lot of comments around, well, if you don't post about what's happening or repost or whatever, then that means you don't care and I'm going to unfollow you. And there's so many people that are so like that have so much assumption about somebody else based on how they are or are not showing up on social media. And I think that is not fair. And I think that is wrong. We can distract ourselves from the truth of what's actually we're supposed to be facing, versus why are we again now pinning ourselves against another person, creating more division, creating more separation, versus like really honoring where everybody is at, which is very different. Like I would say I have a very challenging time just posting about something or whatever because people want me to and expect that of me, versus like honoring, actually my work is more so in the quiet. And maybe not in such a loud way, because it doesn't feel like that's where I'm being authentically called. Now, if you're doing that, amazing, go for it. Yeah, do what you need to do. you are a channel of spirit in your own right, and you deserve to do what you would need to do for yourself and what you think is best, but don't make this a competition, or don't make other people feel wrong or ashamed of how they're showing up. Because I think at the end of the day, we all are just trying our best, and some of us have more sensitive nervous systems than others, which is, I would say, probably the both of us here and many of my community. Like, and so it's like, it doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be outrageous. Like, our activism can be in those quiet moments of journaling or shaking or whatever it is that you need to tend to the hurt and the disappointment that you're feeling. And
Mhm.
we're all in different phases of that journey. And if we're not, we just have to be very careful about how we, even as like an individual in a collective moment of such hatred and divisiveness, like if we're not careful, we can easily fall into that. I think I'll say for myself, I have a responsibility to really continue to ask myself, am I doing this because it feels integral and authentic to me, or am I doing this so that I make other people happy?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're naming something really important about the different roles that people can play in times like these, where some people are more suited or called to policy and protest, and there are others who are also more suited for and called to care in smaller, quieter ways and for repair. And, on the other hand, I can also understand some of the arguments that we're seeing with some sides of the discussion, in which, does wellness really matter at a time of such
Mm,
high collective need? And that and I think I can understand a little bit of those arguments, where I think people do have this particular idea of inner work or personal growth as just about protecting one's peace, and that
mm,
in certain spaces, everything is about boundaries these days, and sometimes that language is used to justify avoidance of discomfort, and that growth can have that reputation of just being about self optimization, and healing as just achieving the best version of yourself. And in some ways, that can make the work feel really small and self centered and a little selfish, right? But I think it really all comes down to how we frame wellness and how we think about what personal growth is really ultimately here to serve. And the way that I think about it, and sort of the litmus test for me, is like, is the work making me more reachable and accessible and grounded in my contact with reality, or more removed from it? And, I think about, again, it's like, to be able to hold all of the hurt, or at least be able to witness it, does require that inner scaffolding, and it does require some amount of boundary setting, so that you're
mhm,
not being completely, you know, discombobulated and completely taken away by everything that's happening in the world. To what you're saying is about the power of those small actions that may not necessarily match the scale of the anger and the crisis, but at its heart is sincere. And I feel like sincerity is something that I think we're not really, or just, it's just something that I feel like I've been thinking a lot about, in terms of what is the best way to really contribute, what is the small role that I can play in all of this, and how do I participate in this? And I think sincerity has to be a really key part of it, sort of to your point, like doing the things and contributing in the ways that are aligned with my particular neurochemistry, my particular skill set, my gifts. And then not everything has to be this direct intervention
mhm,
with what's going on. So it can be journaling, it can be poetry, it can be art, it can be healing and shamanism and For me, I volunteer in hospice work and I sit with the dying every week. That doesn't necessarily solve the macro problem, but it's something that I feel really connected to. It's something that trains my heart and it builds my capacity to be with discomfort, and it also humbles me. I think that personal growth is necessary in all of this because it's the way to really ask yourself, what am I uniquely suited to offer? What is the unique way that I can contribute and serve? And I just feel like people are looking for that right now. But it's hard to get to the core of that. It's hard to get to the answer of that when everyone is demanding performance of your care to prove that you care. And again, I feel like it's sort of, where's the sincerity in that?
We have a hello from Bobby here.
Bobby.
Bobby. I mean, there's so much about this topic that I've had to really understand and get clear with myself about, like, what I feel are aligned with my values right now, of how I'm showing up and all of that. And I'll speak from my personal experience. So I used to be somebody that didn't know how to separate myself from, whether that be another person's wound or pain or the collective wound or pain. If someone's wound and pain was as deep well, guess what? I would be able to meet you in that well and sit with you in that for however long. Now, that might have been a really great way to understand what you were going through. But guess what? That left me on my couch for 4 days, unable to move, because I was soaking up like a sponge all of that unprocessed hurt and pain and grief that this person was, sharing with me. And 4 days, and I'm giving this as an example, like as a true example, 4 days, I didn't go to work. I was laying in bed all day, depressed, crying, as if what had happened to this person had happened to me, but times 1,000 even. And I thought I was being heroic. I thought that that was something that made me special, that made me unique. Wow, I'm really there for my friend. I'm really, really in her shoes and able to really feel the depths of her pain. But what that did was completely steal so much of my life force. That also in turn made me grieve maybe perhaps a lot of what she wasn't grieving, because I could do it for her. So I took her power away there. And 3, this was during when I was a nurse. I didn't go to work. So I wasn't there for my patients. I wasn't doing the work that, I was, signing up to do, because I was so down. That's not healthy. That's not a way to live your life, when the reality is that we are always going through collective grief and pain and suffering and struggle. If we all were sponges for that on a day-to-day basis, we wouldn't be productive really in the society. So I think it's really important to know your edge and to have those healthy boundaries energetically, physically, emotionally, to make space and time and ritual and maybe connect with your community to do some of that work together. But also know you're not a bad person if you want to go to Mexico with your partner and just have joy and fun and be in the sun for a week. Or you're not a bad person if you want to go roller skating with a friend and laugh. And, you're not doing the world a service if you are just lowering your frequency to be in the muck and in the stuckness alongside of everybody.
Yeah.
We need people to still share and offer experiences of joy and laughter and beauty and awe, because that makes being in that grief and that dysfunction so much more manageable. And so that's like those fine line layers of, it's really an ongoing cultivation. I can't tell you what your boundaries are. You have to understand and get clear on that yourself to know your limitations. And then you can honor that in a way that feels good for you, while also being like, well, I got what I needed, and then maybe I can show up for a friend that's really on the front lines of defense right now, or I can show up in my community that's a survivor of sexual assault that is feeling really triggered by what's happening with all the uproar right now. So it really is kind of that oxygen mask analogy of like, if you're not sustained and resourced to a certain degree, you're really not doing anybody else a service.
Mm-hmm.
That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
It's not the opinion.
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective. It's something that it's a perspective I very much share. And that this time, it really does feel like the world needs more generosity, for sure. More people to care, more people to give, more people to act. But to your point, it's like we can only really give what we have the capacity to give. One, one, we have to know how to build that capacity. I think that's one part of it, is like understanding what our capacity is. And I think personal healing, personal growth is about how we expand that capacity. But then, the other part of it too is to do that work, to do the capacity expansion work. It's a lifelong journey, it's a process. It's it's not like we can do that constantly all of the time. We have to work, and then we also have to rest. We have to find those ways of resourcing yourself, as you said, through joy and play and laughter, and sometimes taking a break from all of the demands. And there is this sort of pendulation that we do in that. I think because I see this moment as a moment that is asking a lot from us, asking for our generosity. I think that the question is, for me, is where we find the energy for that. And I think that's a personal question that you'd have to ask yourself. But I do think, in this conversation and this particular time, generosity feels really important and really key. And I think part of the medicine for everything that's going on. I don't think it's the only thing, but that's what comes up for me is, how to find ways to give. And I feel like that is what all the rage and the hurt and the anger is really asking for underneath it all. It's asking for justice with our legal systems and our government, our institutions. But in other ways, I also feel like it's asking for generosity and for people to actually be in their communities, be in the world that they can touch and see. Because the thing with social media and what I'm seeing is that it really sort of takes my own center of gravity away from my actual real life, the world that I live in, the communities that I'm a part of, and it centralizes it in all of this language and all of this, again, intense emotion. And the thing that I really have to remind myself is like, that is not base reality. Like base reality is where I am right now, the ability that I have to influence the people that I can connect with, the community that I can serve in my small ways. Like, I feel like that's what we need to get back to a little bit. you know there's so much mental focus on what's happening out there that I wonder if we're losing some of the focus of what can I do here, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's not directly connected to the crisis of the moment. But, what is the thing that I can do now? And then obviously learning to resource myself through it all, too. And so, as I'm thinking about that, I'm curious if there are any moments of generosity or acts of generosity that you have encountered recently in your life, whether it was an act that you performed or whether it was something that you received, and how that changed anything for you.
Mm. Yeah, let me just sit with this because I think that's a big question. Well, I really believe that every decision and every action, whether big or small, matters. And though it might not correlate directly to the crisis at large,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all connected. I think it's all connected. The way that we speak to our neighbors, the way that we drive on the road and cut someone off or don't cut someone off, like all those micro moments, like really add up to a larger whole. And I believe that's like a lot about what I've come to understand with my work that I do is that like how every decision, every choice that you make, and I think we talked about this last time, does have
Mm-hmm.
a consequence, whether that be sending out a positive frequency or maybe not a positive frequency. So I think what I'm just noticing is I feel like generosity that's happening in my life is like I've been getting a lot of really eye-opening and surprising feedback from clients, from people in my community, from people that I've just spent some time with about how I show up in this space and how I've been, the work that I've been doing over these last couple of years, how they've been seeing that and how it's been really made an impact on them in ways that I would never understand or know. And that's been both very humbling and very surprising to hear because I'll speak from somebody that is my work is in service of the higher good for all. And sometimes I don't really know how my work lands or my offering lands or my service lands because a lot of people might not share it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like what I'm and what that's doing is like it's just reflecting a mirror back to me of like, oh, I do matter. What I'm doing is important. What I'm doing is impacting people in ways that are beyond my understanding. And I think when we know that and when that's reflected back to us, that can really make us feel good and continue to feel like we should be showing up in the same ways that we have been, versus doubt or fear,
Yeah.
unworthiness. So I feel like, as an invitation, just very simply, if you know or see somebody or you've experienced somebody change your life in a way that's even so small or big, like, have you told them that? Have you reached out to them?
Mm-hmm.
Have you sent them an email? Have you texted them? Like, those small moments can really make a difference. At least I know they do for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the example that comes to me
Yeah.
as I feel into it.
Yeah.
How about you?
The examples that float up to mind right off the bat are this happens every time I go out with my good friend Christina, and probably with other people as well. This actually happens quite frequently, but every time we go out and frequent businesses, restaurants, cafes, or whatever, the pattern is that we'll always get a little freebie unasked,
Mm.
so a free drink or a free thing on the menu that we didn't consider, or sometimes even, maybe like I've recalled moments where like a bartender made a drink by mistake and we'll get it for free. And I even count those moments as moments of generosity. But that happens a lot for me everywhere I go. And the way that I make meaning of that is just that the giving impulse is so natural for us,
Mm.
and it makes us feel good. It feels, I think, in a lot of cases just as good to give somebody a compliment than it is to receive one. In fact, I think it's even more awkward and uncomfortable to
Mhm.
compliment, but to give one feels so good. And I think generosity is also resourcing in itself. And I just think what a better world it would be if everyone followed your your guidance, right, around never ignoring a generous impulse and to just
Mm.
act on it. And I think there's something in that that feels like medicine for everything. And again, like nothing is going to solve the macro problem, but again, I feel like this whole conversation is in a lot of ways around what are those small and sincere actions we can take to change and help up level the atmosphere around us, because with all the rage and all the hatred and whatever, there's also a sense of powerlessness too that I get. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that it has felt immobilizing for me personally. And so part of where this conversation topic stemmed from is how do I how do we feel activated again in a good, positive, generative way? How do we channel that anger and that hurt in ways that actually benefit and up level and uplift people? And so I think there's something in what you're saying around generosity and not ignoring a generous impulse as just a tiny, tiny, tiny way forward, and just a tiny, tiny, tiny thing that we can all do to hold it all. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I also want to share, like, if you're hearing this right now and you feel like you don't have much to give because you're so frozen or really actually impacted by what's happening on a dangerous level, and there's not much that you feel like you can give, that's also okay. And the act of generosity, then if you don't feel like you can give to another, then give that to yourself.
mhm,
Whatever that. I'm going to cook myself a really nourishing meal. I'm going to make myself a really wonderful, fresh, warm cup of coffee.
mhm,
Those small moments of self generosity can also take you very far. And so, because I know right now a lot of people don't even feel like they have the energy to like do the
yeah,
small thing. So see if you can do like the small thing for yourself.
mhm,
Pour yourself a bath, take yourself on a walk, and acknowledge when you do something like that for yourself, because then your brain can feel like the reward system turning on, and then that could motivate you to do that again and then and again, and like over time that might build into something you have more resourcefulness for, whether that's to give to others or give to your family or to show up in a way that maybe you would like to. So that's just another offering. From what I've been hearing from a lot of people, it's been hard to even do the little thing. So
yeah,
hopefully that's helpful.
for sure. Super important. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
to wrap up, I know that you have something really exciting and really, I think, true to your heart that you're putting on offer right now. So, would love for you to share that with us.
Yeah, I'm sure I can speak for all the other entrepreneurs out there that are launching something or offering something. It being like, well, is now the right time? I don't want to add to the noise. I don't want to like bombard people with another thing to like think about. And then I had to really sit that inner voice down and say, but you're adding benefit, you're adding support, you're adding some medicine to the fire that's, ablaze right now. And so, um, yeah, I have a course called A Poet's Dream, which is a 12-week journey where you'll really get the opportunity to dive into your inner landscape, your dream world, while also learning how to craft poetic expressions, the imagery and the symbolism that you receive in your dreams. And I don't know about you, but like for me, my dreams tell me so much. Like that's a huge line, a huge channel to where I receive knowledge, information, wisdom, healing, next steps for my life and for so much of what I'm cultivating. And I really want to teach people how to feel empowered by understanding their dreams and knowing then, like, okay, well, how do I understand what the meaning is? What do I do with it? And how do I bring this forward so that I can at least empower myself to do what I need to do for myself? And I think right now why I feel like it's really important is because I feel like we're in a society point where a lot of people are trying to really activate their voice and their truth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an activation for that. And a lot of our truth might be hidden in the subconscious, it might be hidden in the dream world. And so, if you get the opportunity to explore that and to activate that, then you might find yourself feeling really inspired and in creative flow and, yeah, on the opposite end of that powerlessness. It feels like it's the right time for this offering to be had, though, of course, I didn't plan it that way originally. So, if you would like to know more, I have a free webinar on February 16th at 4 p.m. virtually where you can come and I can share a little bit more information. And of course, the course is on my website. If you want to just sign up. And yeah, I'm curious for you, Charley, what feels alive, if anything, that you're offering or sharing right now, whether it's professionally or just personally.
Mm. Yeah. Well, something that you know that I've been really engaged with is somatic practice. And so I've been running workshops that help people connect with their bodies and their felt sense of things. I'm also prototyping a one-to-one somatic support container right now, and I am looking to expand that practice. So I actually just did start playing around with opening up a founding client pay what you can model just to help me build out this practice and help more people connect back down to their bodies and create a safe space for that somatic self study because
Mm.
so much of where we're at in this world and all of the uncertainty that we're dealing with, I just don't think that the intellect can help us solve for a lot of those things. We over rely on the intellect, and there's something about this particular moment that I think is really calling us back into our somatic wisdom, our body wisdom, our feelings, our sensations, our felt sense of things that maybe we can't always make sense of consciously or logically, but are really important information for us to move forward to, again, get to a place where we can just let go of the performance and the pretending, so sort of like what you were saying is like people are ready to just be in their truth and in their authenticity. And I think that somatic practice is a really powerful way to get there. And so I am doing that and offering that. If anyone is interested, please get in touch. You know where to reach us.
You sure do. Yay, I love that.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this conversation and
Yeah.
for, yeah, speaking about a hard thing that's happening. It's not comfortable and not easy, but it's important to just acknowledge a name and appreciate you bringing it up, us
Yeah.
having just some loving conversation about it.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for being on this ride, on this ramble.
This ramble
This
ride.
ramble
Until next time.
next time. All right. Thank you.
All right. Mm.